Hello, everyone. It's Eva Wong here from Parity Legal. And here we are, November the 19th, Wednesday, at Regulatory Rewind. And I am back in the UK. And some of us are in Buenos Aires, some of us are in Switzerland, some of us are elsewhere in the world. And just wanted to say thank you. Those of you who came up to us in Buenos Aires, Sub-Zero, and came and said hello. So nice to see some regulars and nice to actually meet people face to face. We are week 47 of the year. We have a very special episode number 25 here today with some special guests from the Web3 Foundation legal team and from Parity Finance. Our topic is Switzerland, and I will pass it over to Isa from the Web3 Foundation legal team. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Eva, for the introduction. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Isabella, and I serve as the Director of Legal at Web3 Foundation. I joined the foundation here in Switzerland almost 3 years ago after spending some time working in financial services industry. And I know that many of you in the audience come from highly technical backgrounds and are truly at the forefront of innovation. But on the legal side, many things feel just as novel. We're often navigating concepts and questions that are entirely new, and that makes our work both challenging and incredibly energizing. So today, together with my colleagues Paul and Helena, we'd love to give you a glimpse into our daily work and share a bit about the regulatory landscape for crypto here in Switzerland. So we hope you're going to enjoy the session. Great. So if we can maybe move to the first slide, because we're going to use a bit of a slide deck today. Nothing fancy.
Oh, this was me. Forgot to do this. Listen to me. Listen to you. Listen to all of the lawyers and finance professionals on this call, but none of this is legal advice, finance, or tax advice from Web3 or Web3 Foundation or from Parity. Apologies, I missed that one. Back over to you, Azan team.
No worries, thank you. So we can move on to the next slide. And next one. Thank you so much. So, when you think about major hubs for financial innovation, your mind probably goes to places like London, Singapore, New York, or perhaps even Zurich. But when it comes to crypto, the story takes quite an unprecedented turn, and suddenly we find ourselves in Zug, which presents a completely different picture. So on the surface, Zug looks like a pretty provincial town rather than a global financial or tech center. And to make things even more charming, it actually hosts a literal bull market festival with like real cattle, real livestock trading, and there's nothing metaphorical about it. Which of course makes the crypto bull market jokes practically unavoidable whenever things start pumping. But jokes aside, Tug actually has three big advantages. And if we can move on to the next slide, please. So basically, one of the big reasons why Zug is an extremely popular place for companies is that it has very low corporate taxes. So as you can see in this map here, the combined effective corporate tax rate in Switzerland is around 11.8%, making it a very attractive destination, not only for crypto founders, but also for European companies more broadly. And the numbers speaks just for themselves. So the city has just 31,000 inhabitants, and yet there are almost 40,000 companies registered in Zug. The second reason, which I guess most of you should be familiar with, is the well-known Swiss stability, which means neutral politics, strong rule of law, and reputation for being a reliable country. And the cherry on top is are the local authorities. The officials here were actually happy to sit down with early crypto people very early instead of just saying no or dismissing them. So those ingredients meant that when crypto early entrepreneurs went for hunting for a home, Zug stood out. And from around 2013 and onward, the first blockchain startups and projects started clustering around Zug. That's when the term Crypto Valley appears for the first time. So by 2013, 14 people were openly branding this area as a reference to Silicon Valley, of course. One of the earliest milestones was that after a global search for friendly jurisdiction, the Ethereum Foundation chose Zug as its home, set up a foundation, and run its Ether crowd sale out of there. So, as other crypto founders saw the success of Ethereum in Zug, and in the absence of regulatory clarity in other countries, many crypto projects followed Ethereum's lead and founded their companies in Zug. So, that playbook put Protocol's foundation in Zug would soon be copied by many others. Now, next slide, please. Thank you. What's very important to note that Zug didn't just tolerate crypto. It embraced it symbolically and practically. So the city of Zug started accepting Bitcoin for tax payment back in 2016. And then it moved on to accepting Bitcoin payments, for example, for company registration fees. And also you could use Bitcoin as in-kind capital contribution if you wanted to set up a company. So one could say that for a government, this was a pretty strong signal saying, we take this sector seriously and we're not scared of it. Now, my colleague Helena will be speaking about this a little bit in more detail, but that mindset also shows up in Swiss financial policy more broadly. So the federal government has explicitly treated financial intermediaries that handle crypto just like any other financial intermediary. So instead of inventing weird crypto only categories, Switzerland mostly said, hey, if you're doing finance with crypto, the standard financial rules apply. So this is this well-known principle of same activity, same rules, which I think gave a lot of comfort to banks, law firms, and other financial institutions dealing with early crypto projects. So also what's quite important to say, and then now we move on to the next slide, please. Thank you, is that the regulatory framework was also provided extremely early. So as you can see in the slide, the ICO guidelines appeared as early as in 2018, but the real regulatory game changer was the DLT Act in 2020. So when you look at it, this is in a really stark contrast, for example, with what's happening in the US, where until today, there's still no comprehensive federal crypto law. We also all remember how the agencies like the SEC and CFTC fought over jurisdiction. We have all seen how the SEC leaned heavily on regulation by enforcement, suing projects and exchanges one by one instead of just giving them a clear framework. So, by contrast, Switzerland built a very clear, cohesive framework years earlier and already integrated tokenized assets into its financial markets infrastructure. So, this is what gave it a competitive advantage. Many people actually don't realize, but in some regards, Switzerland is a very poor country. And what I mean here is that it doesn't have any massive natural resources or big domestic markets. But what it does have is high end research institutions. I'm sure many of you have heard of ETH being one of the top technical universities. It has a culture of engineering, precision, and habit of writing technology neutral laws. And the federal blockchain strategy explicitly said we'll adapt most existing laws and not build a separate fragile crypto law that will be outdated in 2 years. Next slide, please. Thank you. So once the Ethereum Foundation showed the way, and actually in this slide, you can see a building where the Ethereum Foundation was originally founded. Zug very quickly became the place to set up a crypto foundation. So in order to set up a Swiss foundation, you need 50,000 Swiss francs. And these assets create a separate pool with a fixed purpose. So this means that once the founder gives the assets to the foundation, the assets no longer belong to the founder, but the foundation itself. And the purpose of the foundation is written into its bylaws and can't be easily changed, which I guess gives a lot of reassurance to token buyers and community members that the money will be used for the project, not for a Lambo. Also, it's important to highlight, I think, that crypto foundations are supervised by public authorities and need to prepare audited financial statements, which I think adds a lot of transparency when you compare it to other offshore structures. So, just to sum up, why do founders love the Swiss Foundation model? I think it's first of all because of neutral and credible jurisdiction. So, when you operate out of Switzerland, it becomes much easier to convince investors, regulators, and other financial institutions that you might want to partner with. There are also no shareholders, and there's no founder equity. So the foundation's mission is to support an ecosystem and not to maximize profit for owners, as it would have been the case with a regular corporation. And as mentioned earlier, taxes are also quite a significant factor in this matrix. So over time, this even became known as the Zug model for token sales, which means set up a Swiss foundation, run the token issuance, and then finance development of the protocol. You might be asking yourself whether Swiss foundations are still the best legal option which is out there. And it's a fair question. Over the past few years, many jurisdictions have caught up and introduced even more tailored legislation to attract crypto industry. So is Switzerland still the best choice? I'd say probably yes. We're seeing this that this is a classic case of first mover advantage. Switzerland established a very workable, reliable framework early on, and that basically created a strong psychological preference for a solution that's already been tested and proven. So even if on paper other jurisdictions today might offer structures that are equally attractive, many teams still will naturally lean towards what feels safe, familiar, and trusted. So, and I think that in itself is a really powerful advantage. So Just to wrap things up on my side, I'd also like to touch upon on Web3 Foundation. And it is a Swiss foundation registered in the canton of Zug, and it was founded in 2017 by Gavin Wood. And as you might already know, hopefully, our mission is to support Web3 technologies, with Polkadot being our flagship project. And in terms of what we do, we fund research and development teams to build tech stack of the decentralized web. Some of you might have had some touch points with us if you're, for example, a beneficiary of our grants program, because we fund teams to build tools, wallet, bridges, and infrastructure, also education around Polkadot. And of course, much of what we do is also research-based. So we have a team of researchers focusing on cryptography, economic mechanisms relevant to decentralized systems, etc. So in short, we are the steward of the Web3 vision. However, I feel like a certain clarification needs to be made here, because I think this is often the source of confusion. So Web3 Foundation is not actually the legal wrapper for the Polkadot DAO. That role actually belongs to the Cayman-based foundation called Polkadot Community Foundation, PCF in short, which is designed to act on the decisions of the DOT token holders and provide them with a legal shield. Now, in terms of our relationship with Parity, as you all know by now, right, it's a Parity-hosted show. Parity is a private software company, and we collaborate with them and fund their activities because Parity is one of the main technical implementers. So I hope what I presented so far gives you a little bit better understanding of why Zug managed to punch so far above its weight. And now I'll hand over to my colleague Helena, who will discuss the relevant crypto regulatory framework in Switzerland in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isa, and thank you, Eva, for the invite to today's session. I'm Helena, and I've been a legal counsel at the foundation for a little over a year now, working together with Isa, Paul, and two other colleagues. Could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. Today, I'll give you a brief overview of how Switzerland regulates blockchain and digital assets and how that framework compares to the European Union. I'll cover three main points. First, the Swiss DLT Act, its goals and the changes it introduced. Second, the FINMA token classification, which defines how different types of tokens are treated legally. And finally, how Switzerland's approach differs from the EU's MiCA regulation. Next slide, please. Thank you. So let's start with the DLT Act, which stands for the Federal Act on the Adaptation of Federal Law to Developments in Distributed Ledger Technology. Very long name. Rather than creating an entirely new law, Switzerland chose a smart and pragmatic approach. It amended existing laws across areas like civil law, banking law, financial market law to integrate DLT concepts. It entered into force in two phases in 2021, first in February and then fully in August. So what were the goals here? The goals were simple but powerful. Firstly, to provide legal certainty for blockchain-based assets and transactions, also to support innovation while maintaining market and investor protection, and lastly, to remain technology neutral, so the law doesn't favor any specific form of DLT or blockchain system. So what changed with the DLT Act? The DLT Act brought several important changes to Swiss law. Firstly, it introduced a new legal concept called ledger-based securities. These allow ownership rights, like shares or bonds, to be issued and transferred directly on a blockchain. For the first time, tokenized assets can have the same legal standing as traditional securities. Second, it amended bankruptcy law. So if a custodian goes bankrupt, the client's digital assets can be segregated and returned to them. This is a key safeguard for crypto custody services. Third, it created a new regulatory category, the DLT trading facility, under the Financial Market Infrastructure Act. This allows for the trading of digital assets in a regulated environment, including retail clients. So overall, the Act made Switzerland one of the first countries to build a clear and comprehensive legal foundation for tokenized assets and blockchain-based financial services. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now let's look at FINMA's token classification, which is central to how digital assets are regulated in Switzerland. FINMA divides tokens into three main categories: payment tokens, utility tokens, and asset tokens. Sometimes, though, a token can fall into more than one category and is called a hybrid token. So what are payment tokens? Payment tokens are cryptocurrencies used as a means of exchange, like Bitcoin or Litecoin. They don't grant any claim on the issuer. They're not considered securities, but they fall under anti-money laundering rules. Utility coins give access to a digital application or service. For example, a token, you need to use a specific blockchain platform. If they're purely functional and not investment instruments, they're generally not subject to financial market regulation. And lastly, asset tokens represent assets such as shares, bonds, or claims to future profits. These are treated as securities under Swiss law and are subject to prospectus and trading rules. The classification depends not on the label, but on the actual economic function of the token, so what rights it gives and how it's used. This framework provides clarity for issuers and investors and has become a model for other jurisdictions. So why exactly does this classification matter? These categories have important consequences. If you issue a payment token, you need to register with a self-regulatory organization under AML laws. If you issue a utility token, you must prove that it really has a functional use. And if it's an asset token, then you're in the realm of securities law, which means disclosure obligations and potential licensing requirements. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now let's compare Switzerland with the EU. The EU has adopted a new framework called MiCA, short for Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation. MiCA creates one harmonized rulebook for all EU member states. It covers issuers of crypto assets, service providers like exchanges and custodians, and includes rules on market abuse and consumer protection. MiCA classifies tokens into categories such as asset referenced tokens, e-money tokens, and other crypto assets. It's broadly comparable to FINMA's approach, more prescriptive and centralized. So what are the differences? Firstly, the approach. Switzerland integrated DLT into existing laws, while the EU created a completely new regulation. Second, the taxonomy. FINMA focuses on economic function, meaning payment, utility, asset, while MiCA uses broader categories based on stability and purpose. For example, stablecoins as e-money tokens. Also, the scope. Switzerland grants legal status to ledger-based securities and clarifies bankruptcy treatments, areas which MiCA does not cover in detail. And lastly, flexibility. Switzerland's rules are lighter and more principle-based, allowing for faster innovation, while MiCA is more uniform, but also more bureaucratic. So in practice, many crypto firms choose Switzerland for its clarity and stability, while MiCA will enable EU-wide passporting once fully implemented. So to sum up my section, Switzerland's DLT Act has made the country, as Isa has already mentioned, a global leader in crypto law by embedding DLT in existing legal structures. FINMA's token classification provides a simple but pragmatic way to understand how different tokens are regulated. And while the EU's MiCA regulation is more comprehensive and harmonized, Switzerland remains ahead in providing legal certainty for tokenized assets and innovation. Ultimately, Switzerland's approach balances flexibility and legal security, two things that are essential for the sustainable growth of the blockchain system. That's the end of my section. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll now hand over to my colleague, Paul.
Thanks very much, Helena. Hi, everyone. So my name is Paul de Gruschi. I am a senior legal counsel at the Web3 Foundation, working together with Isa, Helena, and others. I guess if we could go to the next slide, please. So in my section, the idea was to give you one fairly brief update on a recent regulatory topic. You've heard from Isa about the background to the foundation, to Zug, to what, why we're here and what we're doing. Helena's given some background to the sort of the history of Swiss legislative developments. So we'll just concentrate on one recent element of regulatory developments, as that's the key theme in Reg Rewind. And then for the second part, I'll just give you a little insight and maybe peek behind the curtain to give you some ideas of the kind of thing that we do within our legal team to support the foundation and the wider ecosystem. So to start with, what we see on the slide here, new Swiss regulation. So this one dates from 22nd of October 2025, and the Swiss Federal Council, they launched a consultation to potentially put in place some new legal provisions, which relate to stable coins and crypto services. I think that's a general theme of 2025. Everyone seems to be launching a stable coin or playing catch up with their regulatory framework on the back of the US Genius Act and a wider industry adoption within financial services and generally of blockchain technology and stable coins. As Helena mentioned, the Swiss approach is to build on top of existing legislation, not to make new provisions. If we can change to the next slide, please. So the key elements of this provision are a new crypto institution license and a new payment institution license. I would try and give you the German. I do live in Switzerland now, but Zahlungsmittelinstitut and Crypto Institute. Helena's smiling at my excellent German pronunciation. Anyway, it's under the payment institution license that we're really looking at some changes on the stablecoin side. Just looking at the time as well and seeing that I should probably speed up a little bit here. So as you'd expect for stablecoins, this new legislation is proposing that stablecoins must be issued in Switzerland, pegged to a single currency, and aimed at maintaining a constant value. And importantly, that they should be redeemed at their fixed value to the holder upon demand. So it's the same kind of thing that we would see in other legislation on these topics. And if they do that, and they issue a white paper with detailed requirements, then they would hit the requirements to be a stable payment crypto asset. So I think in the interest of time, maybe we'll move to speaking a little bit about what we do as a foundation. So if we can go to the next slide, and within the legal team here. So linking back into the foundation's mission, which is to nurture and fund cutting-edge applications for the decentralized web, software protocols, and to create a fair and decentralized internet. So we're here to do the legal side of that. And that means a whole bunch of different things. So we provided, and it makes it really interesting for us as lawyers, or at least for me personally, to be involved across a really wide variety of different topics, which makes life interesting. Every day is different, and you don't know quite what to expect to come in on your desk in the morning. But we cover things like funding, importantly, so where the foundation is making investments, for example, through Cayman foundations and what we call funds law projects, where other people will invest the foundation's funds on its behalf, and ensuring that our part of our work is to ensure that we have the legal provisions in place to make those investments comply with our mission effectively. As Isa already mentioned, we have the grants program, have varying volumes of grants coming through the grants team at the foundation. So as well as the kind of standard commercial contracting element of that. It also where we would be ensuring that milestones are appropriately documented so that payouts can be made when people have done their work. We need to consider issues like how do we contract with certain entities. Of course, in the Web3 space, you have DAOs, more flexible concepts. People are not always working within a legal wrapper as we would find more conventionally. We cover corporate governance type of issues. So, as has been mentioned, the foundation is a not-for-profit, Swiss foundation with charitable status. We have a governing council, which is equivalent to a board of a conventional company. So that board, needs to make sure that it at all times adheres to the rules and requirements of the founding documents for the foundation. In terms of compliance topics, I'd mention, as well as the sort of standard things that any organization would do, data privacy, for instance, we'll be looking at all those exciting disclaimers that you would see at the bottom of a website. So compliance with GDPR, and the Swiss equivalent is called the FADP. But this area gets a bit more tricky in the blockchain world, where, for example, your data privacy authorities might say that blockchain is fundamentally inconsistent with rights that you have under the GDPR. For example, the right to be forgotten, the requirement to delete data. So we get involved in sort of public policy advocacy and industry association advocacy around those kind of complicated and difficult and interesting legal issues. And I think I'll probably finish by talking a bit about IP. This is an interesting one, I think, because the foundation and Web3, generally, we of course have a very much an open source ethos when it comes to coding and software, but that need not necessarily always be the case in regard to our trademarks. So we've had several interesting cases recently where people have been using the Web3 Foundation trademark, let's say, inappropriately. I don't know, I guess I've got my t-shirt on here, so if we can see on the camera, that's what the Web3 Foundation logo looks like. Just thought I'd liven that up by showing people that on the screen. And whilst I think Gavin has basically given the term Web3 to the world, if we have a crypto influencer who's publishing a book that has our trademark on it, that's not something that the foundation necessarily wants. We call it passing off as a legal term. You don't want to be mistaken that someone is actually representing the foundation when they're not. So there was a particular instance where we took steps. We had to send a few letters to ensure that certain crypto influencer, who will remain nameless, did not abuse our IP. We've also seen situations recently where a scam site on YouTube is looking to exploit the foundation's IP using, I think, genuine foundation videos to make a very professional looking site, which perhaps embarrassingly has more followers than the real foundation YouTube site. And using that, we understand, or potentially to try to scam people. We've received reports that might be the case. So we're working with various different organizations to try and ensure that gets taken down, which is not always straightforward. Anyway, I think hopefully that's given you a little insight into the kind of work that we do on a daily basis to support the foundation, support the ecosystem. Now I'll hand over to Adam from Parity to close us out with a interesting talk about tax and VAT elements. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for the intro. I'm going to cover a case in Switzerland from 2023, which is quite a long time ago in the blockchain space, but it does remain relevant to this day, so one worth covering. So back in August 2023, there was a dispute between the tax authorities in Switzerland and a validator on the Polkadot blockchain as to whether their validator rewards were subject to VAT. The Swiss Federal Court made a ruling that there were two separate services being provided, which had separate VAT treatment. The first service was that they recognised was transaction fees that the validator receives, and the second was the blockchain rewards that they receive for securing the network. The difference in VAT treatment between these was based on whether there was an individual recipient of that service. And for the transaction fees, whoever initiated the transaction was deemed to be the recipient of that service, which meant they're identifiable and therefore it was subject to VAT. As for the blockchain rewards for securing the network, as Polkadot was a decentralized network, they ruled that securing the network meant there was no direct individual recipient and that it shouldn't be subject to VAT. While they ruled that Polkadot was sufficiently decentralized as a network for it to be outside the scope of VAT, what it didn't resolve was to what extent a network needs to be decentralized in order to fall outside the scope of that VAT. So what you might find in the future is rewards on less decentralized networks could at some point be subject to different interpretation. And that's everything from me, so over to you, Glenn.
Hi, thank you, Adam. That was a very interesting insight from Parity Finance. And obviously, I would like to thank the Web3 legal team as well. And of course I will, but I am going to pass it over to Glenn to do the wrap up. This is the most number of people we've ever had. So over to you, Glenn.
Thank you, Eva. I just want to give a special thank you to everyone for tuning in this week for our Reg Rewind special. I'd like to thank Isa, Helena, and Paul from the Web3 Foundation legal team and Adam from Parity Finance. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks for another Reg Rewind episode.
Thank you.